Welcome to Sounding Board, a weekly program produced by members of the Soroptimist International of Novato. My name is Amy Burkett, and I'm a Soroptimist member. Now, the primary mission of the organization is to help improve the lives of women and girls, both locally and globally. And with that in mind, today's program is about hormones, how it affects us, and what we can do about it. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our very special guest today, Dr. Shiroko Sokitch, owner of Heart to Heart Medical Center. Now, she's a medical doctor and acupuncturist who has been in practice blending Chinese and Western medicine for over 20 years. And she's been in Sonoma County since 1993 and now has an office right here in Novato. Her tool chest is huge in that she can do acupuncture, Chinese herbs, she works with nutrition, exercise, hands-on healing, and is also able to use medical tests to confirm what's going on with our body. And one of the ways she uses Western medicine is through understanding hormones. So for today, we are going to talk about hormone balance in relation to what happens to women at midlife. So Shiroko, tell me about roles hormones play in midlife.
Well, actually, hormones play a role throughout all of our lives, and basically, without hormones, we would be not functioning. They're so important. And it's a triangle of hormones, brain chemistry, and your immune system that support your entire life. Mm-hmm. And those are the parts of your body that are damaged when there's too much stress. At midlife, what happens is that there are some natural things that begin to decline. So your hormones begin to decline. Mm-hmm. Now, in Chinese medicine, we say they begin to decline when you're 35. And in Western medicine, we say they don't really begin to decline until they can begin at 35, but they don't really begin to decline until you're in your 40s. Mm-hmm. And menopause is supposed to be close to a time around 50. Besides, menopause is ruled by estrogen and progesterone, which are the two main hormones that are made by the ovaries. Mm-hmm. But our bodies have hormones in 7 different major glands that are produced, and they all change at different times of our lives. So it's not just that when you go through menopause that your estrogen and your progesterone declines, mm-hmm. but all your other hormones shift as well. And so there's a lot that can happen in the middle of your life where you begin to have certain changes.
Okay. So how do we figure out what hormones play in our symptoms?
So there's so many symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah. And really what happens when people come to see me, what they're saying is, I feel different. So it's pretty noticeable, you know, okay. Like most people will say, I feel different. I don't feel the same as I used to. I used to do this and this and this and this, and mm-hmm. I felt good, and now I don't feel good. And you know, a lot of times when they come to me, they've already been to several other doctors who say, "Oh, you need antidepressants," or you know, it's not. Some women are, you know enough to say, "Well, am I having menopause?" because they're getting certain classic symptoms of menopause. But some of the symptoms could be as vague as not being able to focus when you're thinking, mm-hmm. or you could be more tired than usual in the late afternoon. Or you could begin to have headaches. Mm-hmm. There's certain people who get headaches at certain times of the month. Or you can get hot flashes, which is pretty classic, you know, or difficulty sleeping. Some women start having trouble sleeping when they turn 35 and they don't connect it to hormonal shifts. Mm. They think, oh yeah, I started having trouble sleeping because I had a baby or something like that, which also, of course, is hormonal. I've had women have digestive problems, skin problems. So everything is connected to your hormones.
All the changes.
And any kind, yeah. But really what I think is the most noticeable is a person who comes to me and says they don't feel the same as they used to. And that's the sign that something has begun to happen.
Okay. So is it just mind over matter?
Well, that's a big question because in my work, everything is mind and everything is matter. Both are, they're connected. Your mind isn't not connected to your body. In some ways, everything is mind over matter, and in some ways, it's all physical as well. In fact, over the 20 years that I've been doing this, I came up with a theory that where I put the Chinese and the Western medicine together to explain how your body, mind, and spirit are connected, because all of it is connected. I call it my 20, 30, 50 healing path, and it's based on the principles of Chinese medicine, but also how Western medicine ties into it. So 20 is if they're in percentages, 20% is physical. And it means that any condition you have, any symptom you have, anything that's going on with you, 20% of that can be dealt with using some physical modality, looking at your hormones, testing your hormones, doing blood tests, doing some kind of medical intervention, something like that, but only 20% of it. 30% is lifestyle, so it involves what you eat, how you exercise, what supplements you take, even your attitude, and that's all that you do at home, like what you can have control over. And 50% is emotional and spiritual. And that comes out of, again, my 20 years of doing both Chinese and Western medicine. And in Chinese medicine, every organ has emotional functions and spiritual functions. And the theory of how disease happens comes from the idea that your disease either comes from outside your body, which would be like a bacteria or a virus or some infectious thing, or it comes from inside your body. And like most disease comes from inside.
Okay.
And it's based on your emotions.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, interesting that it's 50% emotions and spiritual.
Yeah.
So tell me about bioidentical hormones and how are they different from others that we might take?
Okay, again, it's a big answer.
I know.
Bioidentical hormones are a very specific, so your body produces hormones naturally.
Okay.
And when your body stops producing hormones, then you start to have symptoms of not having those hormones. Bioidentical hormones are hormones that you take as a replacement for your natural hormones, and they are exactly biologically the same as the hormones that you have in your body already.
Okay.
So that's what it means. They're bioidentical, so they're identical to your natural hormones. There are hormones that women are given or people are given that are not bioidentical. They come, like Premarin is a classic hormone that women are given at menopause, and it is bioidentical to a horse. It's pregnant. It's made from the urine of a pregnant mare.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a whole long story about how it's produced and how they keep mares thinking that they're pregnant so that they can keep producing this hormone. And there's Provera, which is another not biologic, so they're not biologically the same as what our bodies produce.
Okay.
And there's a theory that if you take a hormone that's not biologically the same as what your body produces, that your body has to work harder to use it. Actually, I'm not so sure because birth control pills are also not bioidentical, and women have been using birth control pills successfully for a really long time. But in relation to hormone replacement, the closer you are to natural, at least this is my thinking, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily what everybody thinks, but the closer you are to what your body naturally does, the less of a harmful impact it could have. And everything that I do in my practice of medicine is to help people be as close to natural as they can.
Sure.
And in fact, usually I don't give hormones as my first choice of what I give people when they're having a hard time with their symptoms. I have this huge list of herbs, and I usually do a test to measure what people's hormones are. And like I said, estrogen and progesterone are just two hormones. There are actually 3 different kinds of estrogen that your body produces. And then they each have metabolites.
Okay.
And then there are, your adrenals produce like over 20 different hormones just in your adrenal glands. And your adrenals have a lot to do with your energy. And in fact, the first hormone that's made in the adrenal glands is made from cholesterol. And it's one of the reasons that I don't like to get a person's cholesterol level too low, because if they get their cholesterol too low, then they can't make hormones.
Interesting.
And anyway, we can measure all those different hormones, and then there are natural things to replace each one of them. So there's pregnenolone and there's progesterone, and then your hormones, your adrenals also make cortisone and cortisol, which are stress hormones.
Right.
And there's something herbal or natural to replace each one of those things.
Okay.
So I usually ask my patient, what do they want and how do they want to feel? And having done this for 20 years, I have an idea of what is going to work for who and how it's going to work.
Interesting.
So I can usually tell, what's going to help you, and
based
like
on
that.
your
based on the person, based on how bad they feel. Like I had a woman come in the other day. She was just going crazy. I mean, emotionally. So with menopause, sometimes emotionally you'll get really unstable. You'll get really, you'll cry at the drop of a hat.
Right.
Or you'll cry at a commercial. I've had women come in and say, I never cry, and now I'm crying in a commercial, right? And usually that's so urgent, like when they get that uncomfortable, that usually I'll put them on hormones. But another person may just say, I'm a little bit uncomfortable, and I get kind of tired, and I'm not sleeping so well, and sometimes I'll have a little hot flash here and there. So then I'll just give them herbs, because it's not bothering them so much, and the herbs might work.
I see.
So it kind of, I study things based on how bad do you feel and what does it take for you to get balanced.
Okay.
It's all about getting you balanced.
Right. So you're saying, we don't necessarily have to have hormones to be balanced?
Right.
Yeah?
You don't necessarily have to. No, yeah.
Oh, awesome. So what other success stories or any other examples of how you've helped people through the hormonal changes?
I have hundreds and hundreds of stories. I mean, hundreds. Okay, so I'll think of a few. Like I said, there was the woman who just came in the other day and was very emotionally, so that was the scary part. Right. And I have to say that for me, that's what happened is, I went through many layers of hormonal shifts throughout perimenopause, and part of my job as a healer, I think, is to experience things myself.
Right.
So I've had a lot of the experiences that I help my patients with, and sometimes I wonder, am I not allowed to take care of something until I have the experience? Hopefully not, because I take care of a lot of different diseases. But there's actually a woman who I just have been seeing for about 10 years, and she's in menopause now, and she has fibroids.
Okay.
And they're very, very painful for her. And she actually hates needles, but it works so well for her. Okay. And she doesn't want to take anything. She doesn't want to take any hormones. She doesn't want to she hardly even really wants to take herbs, although she's willing to take herbs. So she came to see me just actually last week for the first time I hadn't seen her in a couple years. And she was saying, I'm in so much pain and I need some help with these fibroids. I did one treatment and the pain went away.
Wow.
Now the fibroids aren't gone. They're still there, but the pain that she was having is gone. And a lot of times in menopause, your fibroids will go away naturally because they're usually fed by your hormones. That's what causes them. And so as your hormones go away, then the fibroids will naturally go away. But in her case, she's already not having periods and she still has the fibroids. So we're trying to make them go away so that she doesn't have to have surgery.
Okay. And that treatment that you were talking about is the acupuncture, right?
It was an acupuncture treatment, yeah.
Okay.
I also gave her herbs, but she doesn't really want to take anything. So she's more naturally oriented. Then there, the very common problem that women have as in any phase of perimenopause is not sleeping well.
Right.
And so a lot of times that has to do with progesterone levels. As you proceed through perimenopause, your progesterone levels begin to drop, and they drop usually faster than estrogen levels. And some of that is believed to be because of our diets. We have a lot of foods in our diet that have some sort of artificial estrogen effect. And so it seems in these times that a lot more people are having symptoms of more estrogen than progesterone. And so one of them is not sleeping so well. The other is that really bad PMS. So when somebody has really bad PMS and they start getting really cranky right before their period, and they want to fight with everybody, and they want to eat chocolate, and all those things. Those are symptoms of not enough progesterone.
Okay.
So we can measure it, or we can use a bioidentical hormone cream.
Okay.
Or there's an herb called Vitex.
Okay.
And that herb can act like progesterone does in your body. And so it can help you have sleep, and it can help you not be so moody.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the moodiness before the period.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So how about for men? Do they also suffer hormonal imbalance?
Well, yes, they do. I've even had men have hot flashes.
Oh, that's the first.
Yeah,
wow, that's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, no, I've had men come in with hot flashes or trouble sleeping.
Okay.
And I mean, that's more noticeable. But so what I think is that for a lot of men, it's actually, because they don't have a physical thing that goes away so that they can tell. But that moodiness gets worse.
Okay.
And so this might be a little bit controversial to the men, but
I see.
the things that are noticeable is a certain kind of weight gain around the middle.
Sure.
And a moodiness that maybe they didn't have, or a certain, I think this happens to both men and women, and it's maybe more subtle, but that they can't tolerate certain things that they used to tolerate. Let's say your kids misbehave, and you put up with it for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden you just had it up to here, and you cannot tolerate it for one more minute.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of that where people at our age have to begin to be more true to themselves.
Okay.
And they have to, and I think that's true for both men and women. And if you don't really start to listen to what you need to do for yourself, then it begins to be a problem, and then you get more cranky.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's a part of it. But it's hard to explain that, and it's hard to really notice that, So, yes, men have hormonal imbalances too.
Okay, so as far as the, the middle part, since you were talking about, the gaining in the middle. So for women, is it more on the hips? Do they also?
It depends on what your hormones are doing, really.
Okay.
There's if you have a lot of cortisol or cortisone or your cortisol levels, usually because of stress.
Yes.
If you tend to be a very stressed out person, then you'll gain weight right here. It's been talked about a lot. There's supplements that they sell on TV. I've seen them.
Right.
To help with that midlife weight gain. And that is usually, there's two things that happen. One is that your cortisol levels go up.
Okay.
And two is that your cells begin to be less sensitive to insulin.
Okay.
So your ability to tolerate carbohydrates drops. And part of that is because of those hormonal shifts with the cortisone and the cortisol. And part of that is because people eat probably more carbohydrates than they should most of the time.
Okay.
But even if you don't eat too many carbohydrates, your tolerance for them shifts as you get older, and your ability to your cell's ability to recognize insulin shifts.
Shifts. Okay.
It's a part of the, I don't want to call it menopause, but it happens around that time of life.
Right. And then the forgetting the keys, that mental focus or mental acuity. That's
Well, like I said, there's 7 glands that produce hormones in your body. And so it's not just your ovaries or your testes or your adrenals. It's also your brain has a pituitary, and all the hormones shift. And I also think that brain chemistry shifts, because estrogen regulates a certain ability of your brain to focus. So it regulates some of the chemicals that your brain produces, which is why some people get depressed. Some people forget things. And so it's the estrogen's effect on your brain that is different. It shifts. Most people, it's not permanent for most people. Usually after they're through menopause for a while, then that memory thing comes back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so which one, as far as balancing, do you have the first defense, not line of defense, but the treatment like acupuncture, or?
What do I do first?
Yes,
how do I prioritize?
Yes, yes.
Well, always I prioritize according to what I think is least invasive, which is silly. It's not silly, but
it's great.
It's, to me, acupuncture, even though you put a needle in your skin, is still less invasive than taking a pill or taking a hormone. Because acupuncture helps your body naturally come back into its balance. So my first line of defense is to use diet and exercise. And then my second line of defense is to use acupuncture.
Okay, great.
And then if a person has certain levels of imbalance, I'll choose I'll use herbs, or I'll use vitamins and supplements. There are certain supplements that help everything. Like I was saying in the beginning, there's that triangle of your brain and your hormones and your immune system.
Okay.
And all 3 of them are helped by 2 supplements. One is omega fatty acids.
Okay.
And the other is vitamin D.
Okay.
And interestingly, all 3 are helped by that. So one simple thing to do, and this is even good for children, is to give them omega fatty acids and to give them vitamin D and to make sure that those levels are okay. And just that might make so much difference.
Interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that like your first one is like really the lifestyle, that people can control that on their end. And then talk about the emotional and spiritual, because I know that that's 50%. How does that work? I mean, as far as the hormone balancing.
Interesting question.
I know.
Because it all goes together, right?
Okay.
So who knows what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Okay.
I mean, I've seen over 40,000 people in the last 25 years. I did emergency medicine for 10 years, and I did what I've done lately for the last 20 years, and they overlapped. But in that time, what I've seen is that sometimes it looks like the physical is the first thing that happened. And especially around menopause or around that time of life, people's lives change drastically quite often. Their kids, usually it's your kids are going away, right? That's the natural thing, is that their kids are going away.
Oh, yes.
But nowadays, so many people are getting divorced right around that time.
Okay.
And they're changing their lives. Some people are starting whole new careers at this time, so there's a lot of change. Who knows what came first? Is it the hormones changing that makes you change your life? Or is it that something happens in your natural clock that makes you change your life? But I've seen it so much. I'd say most of the people I see, there's some major life change at that time of life, late 40s, early 50s. It's a very important transition time. And I actually think it starts with the hormones. And then the emotions shift.
Okay, yes.
So that it starts with the physical, which is only 20%. But then on top of that, I mean, we have so many things. We have the stresses that we, like just every day sitting in traffic.
Right.
That's a stress, right? I mean, how
Yes.
many times have you sat in traffic and just like, oh, I got to be somewhere on
tighten
time, right?
up. Yes.
Yeah, I try so hard not to be so stressed about that, but you know,
Yes.
your kids not doing what you want them to do, you know, or going to the grocery store and being late to get dinner ready, you know, like every little thing has an impact on us, and we don't really pay attention to those things. We just let them be. And then there's those bigger stresses, you know, like how the economy is and what's happening on our planet and who's going to be the next president, you know, like you go on, or there's so many things, and all of those things affect our emotions.
Right.
And then you take your personal stuff, you know, what happened to you when you were a kid? Like, did your mom feed you on time? And did you get picked up from school, or were you abandoned in school? You know,
Right,
all those
yes.
kinds of things. All those things are in us. This physical body is the vessel for all that stuff. And it affects people. I have a lady that I've been seeing. She's in her 60s, and she decided she wanted to become a healer, and she had a traumatic childhood, she had a traumatic life, she had a difficult time, and once she decided she wanted to become a healer, all of a sudden everything started to go wrong with her. She's in so much pain, physical pain, that she can hardly walk, and she can't stop crying. And you know, so there's some component that's hormonal, but there's a lot. We've done tests and looked at all kinds of things, and there's really not much physically that we've been able to find. But there's all these emotions that she's held inside for so long that they're affecting her physically. So that physical pain is because of some emotional stresses that she's held for 60 years.
Right.
You know, she told me that somebody apologized to her one day for something they did, and she said, you know, her mom had never apologized to her.
So that's
for
big.
terrible things that her mom had done. You know, all of that is stored inside your body.
Wow. And so you help them through that as well.
Sometimes, what's cool about acupuncture is sometimes you don't even have to think about it, because acupuncture affects you on all those levels.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, any thoughts before we wrap up the program?
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes.
I think I've said everything that I want to say.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for the viewers for viewing, watching this program, because it's really a vital program available right here in Novato. So, Shiroko, if people want to contact you, how will they find you? Or well,
my name's pretty unusual. You can just type it into Google, Shiroko, S-H-I-R-O-K-O, Sokitch, S-O-K-I-T-C-H.
Okay.
And then my website is, it's a mouthful. It's www.h as in happy, T as in Tom, H as in happy, M as in monkey, C as in cat.com, HTHMC.com.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you, Shiroko, for really gracing us here today. Thank you to our viewers for watching the program. Thank you to the Soroptimist members who actually help, produce all these sounding board programs. And especially thank you to Rick and Leon of Novato Public Access Television for helping us always.